Dr. Jazz.
Thanks so much for taking the time, Thomas. You know,
Thanks for having me.
I talked with like, you're the last puzzle of the thumb screw, if nothing else. No, and I talked to so many guys. You know, you play with Gerald and Mary and Mike Formanek and I don't know, so many guys, and I really like doing these interviews just to get to know you a little bit better. And it's like ever since this one came out, I I love that record. I listened to that so much, and I'm so happy also that you have a new one out. The new Triple Double project, and which is kind of a continuation of the 2017 one, I guess. So, but first, the question, I will just dig in, like, where the idea from Triple Double? I mean, I know, it's kind of like the continuation of this one, I guess. It was one trio, but like, how did you come up of doing this project, actually?
So I had with that trio album that you just showed, I hadn't played with Ralph Alessi or Brandon Seabrook before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
wow.
had known them from, we were all in Brooklyn, and was friendly with them and had heard them play, and really wanted to do something with them. And then I also thought it would be a really cool combination. The two of them had never played together either.
Really? Oh, wow. Okay.
Before that trio album. So I really like doing that, dating back to some of the first ensembles I had, the hookup and stuff like that. There's always an element of certain musicians having never played together, or in some cases having never met. I kind of gravitate towards that kind of unknown and first time connections. So yeah, I'd been thinking about doing something with Ralph, something with Brandon. I said, let's, let me think about a trio thing. So I wrote some music. We did that live album, and did a little bit of touring, and was really enjoying that, and was thinking of kind of a more expanded thing from that. And Mary Halvorson and Taylor Ho Bynum are two musicians that I have played with a ton over the years, and and so I wanted to include them in it. And Gerald has always been one of my favorite drummers, and a good friend, and someone I would go check out all the time. So it actually came together more thinking about the people and the musicians and their sounds, more than thinking, okay, I want to have this instrumentation of, two brass, two guitars, and two drums. That was secondary.
Okay.
So as the idea started to take shape in terms of who I wanted to be involved, I kind of saw that it was this, three duos or two trios. But I think a lot of people, excuse me, a lot of people think with that kind of instrumentation, it was like, okay, this is the instrumentation I have. Who do I fit into the different roles?
Yeah.
It was the other way around. It was really just thinking about the people, and then realizing that it kind of created this cool instrumentation that I could experiment with.
Yeah, I think it's quite unique. I mean, like, from scratch, I can't remember any like double drums, guitar, and trumpet. I mean, cornet, but like this, I think it's quite unique in the world of jazz.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, people sometimes ask me like ensemble inspirations for this group, and for me there aren't any. I mean, you can maybe draw some comparisons or some parallels, but again, it was much more about the personalities than trying to create a certain instrumentation.
When you wrote the music, I mean, for this one, are you kind of writing for the players like this in kind of Ellington fashion way, like because the music it's quite swinging, then it's like like the second track, Live Only Gets More, I think, or like it's like swinging, I didn't expect that. It's quite really jazzy, and then there are these hookups you always create in your music, and rhythm, of course, is one huge aspect, I think. But how do you prepare, like, when writing for this group? Like, how did you envision the composition process? How did that go?
Yeah, as you said, it's very specific to the players. So, as I get more and more familiar with the playing of people that I play with, I have that much more to draw on when I write for them. So, the guitar parts, the brass parts, even the drum parts, we could swap them if we wanted to. It's not like people aren't capable of it.
Sure.
But I really am writing specifically for Ralph to play this part and for Taylor to play this part. And so yeah, it's a combination of thinking about their sound and their approach to playing compositional material, and trying to frame that in ways that I feel really allows that to step forward and to shine. And then also an element of like trying to push people maybe a little bit outside their comfort zones, or challenge them, or see what they, because everyone's such a great improviser and such a great interpreter of written material. Try to give them something and say, I know they're going to do something great with this, but since I can't hear exactly how they're going to solve this puzzle, I'm going to put that in there because I know that the results of how they navigate this is going to be really great.
Yeah.
But definitely thinking about the people, definitely.
Yeah, you can hear that. Yeah. I mean, how do you start like a tune usually? Where is your starting point?
It depends. It really depends. So I also play vibraphone. I find that the vibraphone for me, more than the piano, is a great way for me to hear harmonies and the way different tones interact. So whenever possible, I try to use the vibraphone for especially harmonic stuff, and also for melodies. I use the drums obviously for rhythmic stuff and groove stuff, but I also, because it's the instrument I have the most facility on, I do also use it to create melodic shapes. Thinking of the instrument in terms of low to high pitches, thinking about it intervallically. So I'll use those two. Computer software when it's time to put the ideas down, because if there's too many parts for me to be able to play everything at once. And then a little bit of the keyboard. If I can't get to the vibes, I'll find a keyboard or a piano, and then a little bit of maybe some voice memos. If I just have an idea, I'll kind of sing it or say it. And a lot of it is also thinking about it in more of a big picture concept. Sometimes compositions will start more just writing words.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, different textures I want, or different spaces I want it to go. But it really depends. I mean, sometimes it'll be a photograph. There's a piece from the first Triple Double album that I got inspired by. Actually, the studio at Firehouse 12 has these really cool. The room is built specifically for recording.
Yeah.
So there are all these walls and panels with acoustic shapes that optimize acoustics. And there was this wall panel made out of wood that had these slits cut into them, and they were all different lengths. And I just got this idea, and I took a picture of it, and I kind of applied those shapes to staff paper.
Oh, that's cool.
And it created this really cool, this really cool line and this really cool shape. So that was the inspiration for, I think it's Diving for Quarters from the first Triple Double album. So I guess the answer to your question is there's like 10 different ways that I
sure.
And, but the vibes, especially because I've had a good instrument now for the past almost 2 years, I really feel that's helped my composing progress, to just have access, regular access to a good instrument, because I just really, a lot of the musical ideas just seem to come out and to be able to be fleshed out more easily when I'm able to play them on the vibes.
Yeah. It's also interesting when I look at your group, the sextet. it's like all of the players are amazing composers also, you know, and really prolific, you know, Taylor and Mary, I think they write like, I mean, tons of stuff. And of course, Ralph and Gerald and Brendan as well. But like, you know, especially those two, like, it's like incredible amount of music. All of you, I mean, have written, like, it's amazing. But I wanted to ask you about having two drums, you know, playing with Gerald. How did you guys talk about this project when, you know, there's like a beautiful album. I don't know if you know that one that Malaby did with Mike Serene and Tom Rainey.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they're just like one entity when they play. And it's, but how did you, with Gerald, you know, he's super amazing, of course. So,
you know, we didn't talk about anything.
Oh wow,
you know,
really?
I asked him to be a part of it, and he was down. And I mean, I have, you know, I have some specific things for the drums, especially when we're playing different things. Probably, you know, some of it we would do it, and then I would say, you know what, just I would take the paper and just say, don't worry about that, just do whatever. Now that you've heard the piece, like the piece played by the ensemble, just do whatever. But I mean, by I should say this, by far, he's the musician in the band that I've given the least instruction to. We haven't talked about concepts. I think sometimes when we're tuning the drums for a gig, when we're done, we'll just kind of play the toms, be like, okay, cool. You know, like, you know, they sound nice together. But I mean, really, it's just we just get in there and play, and
that's fantastic. Yeah,
it's so much fun, and he's so amazing.
And,
you know, we're just communicating the whole time, and really about the process. So it just happens.
Yeah, no, that's how it usually is. I mean, but it's just like, you know, two drums could be problematic, of course, but not with musicians at your level. I mean, that's like, you know, yeah, I know Gerald. I mean, I played with him. He can play like the most complex stuff with such ease, and then just improvise again with such ease, not even saying anything. And you're just like, man, how do you do that? Really, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's a musician, you know, beyond whatever adjectives we want to use for people, great musicians and all that, which applies to him. But he for me, for how I experience music and how I hear music, he really brings an element of magic to it.
Yeah, that's nicely put. Yeah.
And you know, not that he's doing any tricks or anything like that, but the way that he plays, and you know, some of the things that he does go way beyond being able to analyze them or comprehend them from a technical perspective or from an analytical perspective. It just infuses the music with exactly what's needed, even if you can't name what that is.
Yeah, true.
So in the context of, you know, two drums and the potential challenges that can arise from that, it's like I don't really, I mean, I can look, because I play the same instrument, I can look and see what he is doing. But in terms of what he's really doing, what he's really contributing to the music, it just works and it feels good. And you know, and then on a more, maybe on a more like tangible level, we're both, you know, we both listen, and neither one of us as musicians and as drummers have an agenda of like, me now.
Yeah, it's all about the music. Yeah.
And so I mean, there are a lot of drummers like that, but there are also a lot of drummers where it really feels like they have an agenda, like they need to be seen and heard and have attention on them for a lot of the time. And I don't think that that's really mine or Gerald's aesthetic. So I think that also helps, you know, not just our connection, but also within the group.
I mean, any player in the group, it's like, you know, even Brendan and Mary, you know, like, who are both so specific. I mean, me being a guitarist, like, of course, I listen to what they do, and it's like, you know, they're like not showing off in a sense, like, okay, I'm gonna solo here and I'm gonna show all my chops. It's just like, again, it's about the music, and it's so beautiful that you brought these guys together. I mean, I hope you get to Europe one day soon, so that to see you guys live would be beautiful.
Yeah, we've been a couple of times. We were there in March.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, we would love, yeah, we played in Geneva.
Ah, shit. Okay, that's too far. Yeah. Okay.
But,
oh yeah, the AMR, right? Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of guitar,
I think that's great too. With
Oh, so sorry. Go on. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think what's another thing that's great is that anytime there are duo moments, drums, guitar, the people get really excited about that. There's like no element of competition. There's no element of like, okay, now let me show that I'm the drummer. I'm drummer one, and you're, every time there are those moments, and I make sure to have those moments throughout the recordings and throughout the the live sets. It seems like, it's just like, okay, we're gonna, Taylor and Ralph are gonna be, they're both like, oh great, and you can see that they're just okay, there's not this thing of like, okay, well, check out, like, I can do this, can you do this? And those are always such beautiful moments, and I feel those moments, when Gerald and I have duets. There's just like so much generosity and communication. It's yeah, and I think that those connections with the duos, really infuse the music with this great like community feeling. And
you seem to have that. I mean, when I check, like, Mary and Taylor have been like a mainstay in your music, I guess, for more than 15 years, or even longer. But it kind of reminds me of what you do, like, of 2 generations before, like, Mark Elias and Jerry Hemingway and Ray Anderson, and all these guys were kind of, connecting and playing constantly with each other. And where does this story with you and Mary especially begin, and Taylor? Actually, I have you on a couple of Taylor's records, the early ones. And but where did you all guys begin to play together? When was that?
So I met Taylor when we were both in high school.
Already? Oh wow, man.
We grew up in the Boston area, and the bass player that I was in school with went to music camp with Taylor, and then Taylor was doing a Miles Davis tribute at his high school, and he asked the bassist that I played with to do the gig, and he said, do you know a drummer? And so he recommended me.
Wow. Okay.
So
interesting.
We met. Yeah. So I think I was second year in high school.
Wow.
And Taylor's always had, well, he was already a very advanced musician in that he had already absorbed a lot of music. He had an incredible music collection. He had already listened to a lot of stuff and really checked it out. So he had a great knowledge in that way, and also has always been really energetic and proactive. So at the time, he was working at an ice cream store.
Oh wow!
He got the owners to let him have a jazz series.
Wow.
Where we were paid with ice cream.
Oh shit.
So we started playing together, and then we reconnected. I came to New York, and then he was there for a year when I was there, and we reconnected and really started playing together a lot, and have played together ever since. With Mary, and it's funny because they're all these. So Mary and Taylor went to the same high school.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
But they're 5 years apart, so they weren't there at the same time. And then they went to the same college, but again, different times. So they met later on, but through I believe through Anthony Braxton.
Yeah, sure.
Braxton. So Mary, I met when we were both in New York. We actually met and played for the first time on a gig with Matsuna Roberts. And then it was kind of one of those things. So we did this gig with Matsuna, and then it was one of those things, and I think we all have that with various musicians, where we kept showing up to gigs and being like, oh, you again. So like different people were hiring us, you know, like, and so we started playing together more often, just in different people's bands. And then when Taylor put together a sextet,
yeah, I love that band. Yeah,
that's when we first started playing together regularly. You know, so that's a lot of history and a lot of music. We've all played in each other's bands. We've had collectives, 13th Assembly, this one now, Illegal Crowns.
I love that, yeah.
With Benoit Delbecq, we just recorded our third album after,
fantastic.
after a US tour. Yeah. So it's great. It's great to have people that, you know, that you have built that musical rapport with and that trust with, and people that have been a part of your history since you were a kid.
Yeah.
You know? And then, you know, obviously with Gerald and Ralph and Brandon, you know, newer people to my life, but you build history and camaraderie with them over the years. So it's great.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, you know, you're making a story together, which is, you know, it's when I check kind of the New York, whatever you play or we play, what is this modern creative jazz, or I don't know, it's, but you know, like you're really on all the most important records, at least in my ears and eyes, you know, you and Mary and Taylor, like what you've been doing the last 15 years. It's like, oh, like you said, these guys again, you know, it's like, so you're making this story. That's what I mean. Like,
oh, no, these guys again.
yeah, oh no, yeah, no, but like, you know, in a really nice sense that you know, you've pushed the boundaries in creating this story, like, which is beautiful, as part of a community, like you said, which is nice. So,
thank you.
and as yeah, and like I listened to Amaryllis today by Mary, and man, I mean, talk about a step further, at least for me, like compositionally and everything. Like, it shocked me. Like, again, it's another step further. But how do you see the progress of, you know, playing with Mary, especially in her bands, and like your thoughts on Amaryllis? I mean, it's an incredible record.
It is. It's incredible writing, incredible band, and it's also a band of musicians that really, how do I put it? Really do their homework. You know, we all come prepared. So the rehearsal process and even the performance process is about getting beyond the written material and really creating a sound. And I see the validity in just kind of showing up and working through it and kind of fly by the seat of your pants. But this project is great in many ways, but in one way that everyone just kind of showed up knowing what they needed to do to make the music work. And so we could start from moment one, just kind of being creative with it, taking chances, pulling stuff apart. So that's one thing. And that's a credit to the musicians that are involved, the musicians that she chose to do it. In terms of the writing, you know, the biggest obvious step is with the string quartet. You know, I know that she studied a lot of scores and took lessons and studied orchestration books and came up with this incredible string music. So obviously that's a huge step and a huge addition to her repertoire in terms of composing. And I love how there's Amaryllis and there's Belladonna. So there's the string quartet with Mary, and then there's the sextet, and then there's when the 10 of us come together. And that's really cool too, to see how, you know,
it's beautiful. It's incredible, man. It's like,
and it's cool because we did some touring when the album came out, and just to see the set, kind of see how two ensembles played, and then
you toured with the string quartet as well.
Yeah.
Oh man, wow, beautiful.
Yeah. So I think it's hard to pinpoint like how we all develop and grow. You know, it's almost yeah.
Yeah, you're a part of it. It's hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, because it's really just a day-to-day thing of obviously life experience, but you know, just constant curiosity and study and experimentation, and hopefully you just keep coming up with stuff that's, you know, quality, you know, of a quality that you feel good about and that feels like, you know, personal to what you're trying to express.
Yeah.
But you know, you know how it is. It doesn't necessarily come out of anything particularly unique process. You know, it's practice, it's study,
Oh,
it's
sure.
time,
Yeah.
it's trial and error. And then, you know, as you said, we're really fortunate that we have great musicians that are interpreting our music.
Yeah.
So I think that's also something that can you know, be a positive and inspire confidence as a composer, where you know, well, the people I'm playing with, like I could give them a blank sheet of paper.
That's true, actually.
And they would play something that sounds, you know, compositionally, improvisationally beautiful. So that kind of gives you the confidence to say, I'm just going to try some stuff. I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself. I'm just going to write and create some stuff and bring it to these great musicians, and like I know we're going to make something out of it.
Yeah.
Not that I don't take it very seriously, and obviously when you have great musicians that you're writing for, you don't want to embarrass yourself and bring them some nothing thing that they kind of roll their eyes at. But it's
I know what you mean.
Certainly comforting in those moments to know, like, you know, ultimately anything I bring into them, they're gonna make.
It's gonna be awesome. Yeah. How do you approach, let's say, on this project, like as a drummer, Mary's tunes or compositions? How do you prepare for that? You know, it's quite complex and arranged music. And does Mary write out stuff for the drums, or you have like a carte blanche what to do? Or
it's more of a carte blanche. It's more of a like do what you do. And I guess over the years I've probably played, you know, with different ensembles, I've probably played 2 or 3 compositions where she wrote out a drum part. But for the most part, you know, I come up with the drum parts myself. She might have a comment of like, oh, actually, I want something more like this here, or there might be some written instructions, maybe like an entrance or solo more here. But it's pretty much left up to me, which is great.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Also, I'm sure we've all dealt with band leaders like that, where it's like, hey, you know, do whatever you want here. Oh, actually, but not that. But not that either. It's like, okay, sounds like you know what you want. Like, tell me. She's not like that. If she says, come up with something, you know, be creative, do what you want to do, she's very accepting and open. So that's great. And my approach, kind of with all original music that I'm playing, that I'm the drummer that's playing the music for the first time. A lot of times when I'm looking at the music, I'm always asking for the score, because I want to see how the different parts fit, and I want to see what I want to play with, what I want to play against, what needs some space around it, what needs, you know, more density for me to fill it out, you know, to my ears. And then in terms of things that are in a meter, I'm really thinking about the absolute simplest beat in a lot of sense, and building on that. So even if it's just like 4 quarter notes, you know, with a bass drum on 1 and 3 and a snare on 2 and 4, if that's like the template of a groove that I'm thinking about for a song or a section, that's going to help me build on top of that. You know, it's usually not, I don't usually just start with the full, oh, I'm playing this. I want to have a foundation, and I might never play the foundation or state that to anyone explicitly, but it helps me have some intent behind what I play and what I don't play. So I usually start out that way, is really, you know, if I have like a MIDI of the parts, looking at the score, playing along to it really simply, and kind of adding stuff to it. And then once I've done that, I can really improvise off of it.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm not really like grasping for things, or you know, I've built a certain foundation that I'm referencing. And so that's my approach with her music, and with most of the band leaders I play with, are, you know, people whose music I'm interpreting. I'm given a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
But I'm also open to the conversations. You know, sometimes people are a little more specific about what they want, and that's great too.
Yeah, no, you so beautifully always orchestrate the music. That's what, when you said you look at the score, makes complete sense, you know, because sometimes you go there and, you know, I hear that. I mean, it's hard for a musician to listen to music normally, you know, that you don't start analyzing stuff and like, what is he doing now? It's like, that's terrible for me sometimes, but it's a learning experience, you know, always when I listen, I think. So it's hard to enjoy it maybe more like as a non-musician. So, but where does this approach come from in your playing? You know, like, I've read that you studied with Alan Dawson, who, you know, everyone I talked to Billy Kilson, and he just couldn't give enough praise to Alan, who was his teacher, and everyone who was taught by Alan, like, but does this come from him also, this principle of playing like this non-egoless almost, like, or, you know, or even earlier, I don't know what you listened to, which drummers and all of this?
Yeah, I think I mean, I never spoke to him in our lessons specifically about how he thinks about it, but I think it's very clear in how he plays that it's always in service to the music.
Yeah.
You know, in his teaching, he really emphasizes form and structure. A lot of his exercises, you have to sing a melody while you're playing, so it's always connected to the song. It's never about just drumming and, you know, the drummer's ego or the drummer's technique. It's always connected to song form, melody. He was a great vibraphone player, so the lessons would end playing a duet. So that's how I learned repertoire. That's how I learned about form, trading, accompanying, interacting. So most of those lessons from him, in terms of those concepts, I think just came about from being around him all those years, from studying with him, from going to hear him play a lot, and then obviously, you know, the recordings, which we all can enjoy. So that's definitely very important to me, and I'm sure that a lot of that, if not most of that, comes from him. I think also the music that I gravitate towards, even though there's a lot of improvisation and a lot of what's called soloing, even though people aren't playing solo, they're playing with an ensemble. It's important to me to have that balance of kind of like the individual ego having to express yourself, and balanced with, we're a band, we're an ensemble, we're trying to make a cohesive personal musical statement. And so I would much rather not have like a 10-minute drum solo where I can show the world everything that I've practiced, and be a part of a song that we play together that hopefully, you know, shares something creative, you know, with each other and for the listener.
Yeah.
And so a big part of that is figuring out how I can be in service to that process. And sometimes that does mean really stepping forward. You know, it's not, it would be easy if the answer is like, oh, always play less, always play quieter, always, you know, it's like, because with drums, it's like, oh, can you, you know, do you have brushes there? Or can you, you know, it's not just that. Sometimes the music does call for very forward playing, very dense playing, very intense playing. And sometimes I feel like the music does call for me to like almost drown everyone out. You know, that creates a certain vibe and a certain intensity. But I'm coming from a perspective of at least what I think in the moment is a good choice for the music, as opposed to like, it's been 20 minutes since people cheered for me, so now it's time. You know what I mean? Now it's time for me to do something loud and fast. So, but as with anything, it's balance,
Sure.
and it's a process. I don't get it right all the time, but I'm trying. I'm trying to be in the moment and see what the music calls for. But I think my ear just gravitates towards music like that, and also drummers like that.
Who were these drummers? Like when you were a teenager, let's say, that caught your attention?
My first like drum infatuation was Max Roach, which is actually really interesting because his work covers the full range of really any range you could think of. But in terms of this idea of the drummer and the drummer role, he did solo drum material.
Yeah, it was the opposite actually. What you said.
But he also, he did solo drum material. He does have these incredible extended drum solos on various albums. But he also is like, one of the great ensemble players, accompanists, supporters. So, you know what I mean? He really has that full range, and you never lose the sense of his sense of self and his individuality, even if he's playing behind, quote unquote, Charlie Parker or Clifford Brown or whatever. It's that perfect balance of his individual expression, but really in the service of how this
wider
whole
picture
ensemble is functioning. So he was one. Obviously Alan, all the greats. I feel like I would spend these like really like deep dive periods with various drummers. So, Max Roach and Elvin Jones and Tony Williams and Ed Blackwell and Milford Graves and Vernell Fournier and Philly Joe Jones and Papa Joe Jones and Kenny Clark, just on and on and on. And I'll go through these periods. Right now I'm going through a period like that with Tony Allen.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've just been listening to just all his stuff, his leader albums, but all his stuff with Fela, and just
it's incredible.
So I'll do these kind of deep dives.
Interesting.
So yeah,
but
and also I think it's good to check out stuff that doesn't resonate with you and figure out why. Why don't I like this, and what does that say about what I do want to do and the choices that I do want to make, that listening to this thing that I didn't really like kind of brought to my attention, as opposed to just saying, I didn't like that.
No, that does make sense. I wanted to ask, you mentioned all these drummers, and like when you came to New York, did you also go through a period of playing this kind of music, like standards and stuff? Because all the records I have you on is basically this, what you do now, this creative music. But did you also go through a period of playing the traditional stuff, actually?
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for me very important. I want to play the history and the tradition of the music that I'm, hopefully, I don't want to say building upon, but that I'm using as inspiration. And I wanted to learn that repertoire. I mean, for a while, let's see, I guess my second year in New York, every Sunday I had 4 gigs. I had a brunch in one restaurant playing standards. Then I had a brunch in another restaurant playing standards. Then I went back to the first restaurant to play the dinner set, all standards. And then I was the house drummer for a jam session.
Oh, wow, man.
So I would leave my house, and I would wheel my drums around because nothing paid enough to take a taxi. So I would wheel this little kit on like a luggage cart. And if I had to take the subway, one step at a time, I would leave my house at 10 a.m. and I get home at maybe 3 or 4 a.m. And like, if I made $100 for the day, I was like, oh man, I can't believe it. And all those gigs were standards,
Wow.
tunes that I either knew or tunes that I had to figure out in the moment. And that was really, really important to me. To learn that repertoire, to learn that music, stuff that I didn't know, to then go and check out the recordings. For me, that's really important, because that music is
Sure.
my biggest inspiration, for sure. And I still love to do it. I still love, it's like, the more you do it, it's nice because people know you for doing a thing or a couple things and ask you to do that. And I love doing what I do. I also think that probably a lot of musicians, if not most musicians, wish they had opportunities in a wider scope of things. At least that's how I feel. So I love what I do, but I also have had, experiences outside of that world, and always welcome those opportunities to do that stuff. So it's kind of, it's nice to have people know you for doing some stuff and or doing some more specific things.
Yeah.
But it's also nice to kind of go outside that, go outside your comfort zone, or
Sure.
just have different experiences. But yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Interesting. Yeah.
I still listen to that music and still play it, at sessions or, with friends and
Beautiful.
Yeah, sure.
Who were the first guys when you came to New York that you hooked up with? I mean, how was this story when you I guess you already made some connections before, but like
yeah, let's see, some of the first, I mean, I was playing with, I reconnected with Taylor.
Yeah.
So we were playing together some. Steve Lehman was
Oh yeah, sure.
also went to Wesleyan with Taylor, so I connected with him when he first got there. So we were playing together a lot, all standards. I mean, we were playing Jackie McLean tunes and
Oh yeah, sure.
John Coltrane tunes. James Mahone, great saxophonist, that had come to New York. I guess my second year there, we started a band together, kind of my first band. Playing that was kind of our improvisations and originals, but some of these like restaurant gigs or cafe gigs that I'm talking about, we were playing tunes. So a lot of different people that I went to school with, or that I kind of met in New York, and then kind of, I guess a few years later, really a lot with Taylor and Mary.
Yeah, then yeah.
A lot of the people that I play with now.
Yeah. How did you said your first groups, like how did hookup happen and Actionspeak? When did you know that you're kind of ripe to become a band leader and make a record? And how was the story behind that one?
Yeah, I think that was a desire to push myself compositionally and really like force myself to do that regularly and present that music. And I should actually backtrack. Brian Settles, the tenor saxophonist in the hookup, I did my first gig in New York was, I think, my second or third day here was with Brian. So
oh really? Oh wow.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah. So he's another early, very early connection when I got to New York. But yeah, with the hookup, it was really about wanting to write more music and like I said, kind of hold myself accountable to writing music that people were going to play and that I was going to perform and eventually record. So I had been playing a little bit with all the musicians in the group in different contexts, and kind of to the earlier point, thinking of these combinations of people that hadn't played together before. I don't think anyone, I'm pretty sure none of the other four people had played together before.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Okay.
So it was this thing of like having people's sounds in my mind and then also wondering what the combination would sound like. So I just kind of went for it. I just asked everyone if they wanted to be a part of it and wrote some music, and we rehearsed and did gigs at first, just around New York and recorded and did a little touring and like it always is. But the big push for it was just like,
right.
I would do something with some people, maybe bring in a tune, or maybe you do a session and you worked on something and you kind of bring it and people read through it, but saying, I want this to be a bigger part of my identity. And sometimes the only way to do that is to present yourself with a challenge that you can't back away from,
Was it hard for you in the beginning like scary in a, brackets kind of, or?
Yeah, I think for me, compositionally, it's like it's not a straight line. It doesn't get easier the more I do it. There's periods where it's easy and there's periods where it's difficult. So
good. I'm relieved. Good. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, one of the compositions I'm most proud of is like one that I wrote for Actionspeak. This ballad called Questions. So you'd be like, oh, I'm really proud of this composition. They're just gonna keep progressing from there. No, I've written that, and I've written some where I'm just like, I'm not really cutting it on this one. So it's not a straight line. So yeah, the process for me, I mean, I always say, at least for myself, if I wait for inspiration to hit me, I could be waiting a long time.
Sure.
So it's really about just sitting down and just saying, I'm carving out some time to write, or maybe I have a deadline, that I've made for myself, or that someone else has made for me if I need to, write.
Yeah, that's so important.
And I just do it, and I just do it and I just write. I think one thing that's changed a little bit over the years, I think, especially drummers, probably rhythm section players in general, but especially drummers, just generally speaking, aren't taken seriously as composers.
Oh yeah, man.
Just historically. And so I think that I really don't care about that anymore. But if I'm honest with myself, I probably at first did care about proving that I could compose, that I understood harmony, or that I could write something with, 9 sections. And now it's like, no, I'm going to write something that is something that I would want to hear, that I would want to play, that's personal to me. And if it's an 8-bar melody and that's really, I feel like that's done, then that's done. So I think that's changed a little bit over the years, just in doing that, because honestly, the people that don't take me seriously as a composer because I'm a drummer, they still don't.
No, come on, but it's it's.
I mean, it's not. I'm not like thinking of a specific person. I remember we did with Triple Double gig, and this person came up to me, and they didn't have ill intentions, right? They were very enthusiastic, actually. Like, oh, I love the concert. Oh, thank you. Did you write the music for it? Like, yeah, I did. And again, it's one of those things where it's just like, if Ralph had been like, hey, thanks for coming, everyone, to my band, people would be like, oh, it's Ralph's band, Ralph wrote the music, whatever. But because it was me saying, thanks for coming to hear my gig, and this is everyone, they're like, well, but who wrote the music? Certainly not this drummer guy. So they were like, oh, I love that concert. It was so great. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, who wrote the music? Oh, I did. You wrote all the music for that? Yes, I did. You wrote the music for the guitars? Yes, I wrote all the music. Wait, you wrote the music for the trumpets too? Yes, I wrote all of the music. And again, they weren't, it wasn't like a musician trying to vibe you or anything like that. They were just, and then I think they said, like, how did you do that? You play drums. Like, how did you know what they can play or what to write for them? So there's still that thing. And I think that, over time, and I think that that's natural. Whenever you're starting something, or you're new with something, or you're trying to establish yourself, there's a certain sense of like wanting to prove something. And that can, you can see that with drummers. Drummers sometimes have a way that they want to prove that they can play, so they just play like a ton of stuff, and we all know that doesn't, in the long run, that doesn't really prove anything. But a lot of people have to go through that process of being like, oh, okay, I don't have to play like everything I practiced in the first 8 bars, and so with composition, it's one of those things where over time, I've been able to strip away those things that aren't necessary, that are maybe my ego saying like, what I can do this, or saying like, well, I should do something clever here, or I should do something hard. I should do something so that when people are reading it, it's challenging for them. They can't play it right away. So that makes, and, honestly, I think not everyone maybe wants to admit it, but I think a lot of people have that. Not just drummers, just composers in general, this need for it to be complicated or like overly, like, well, check out how, the bassoon part is the baritone part inverted. It's just like, okay, well, that's great. When it's all said and done, we're playing it. Like, what does it sound like? What does it feel like? And so, yeah, exactly. I think over time, just kind of doing it, I've been able to let that go.
Yeah, especially in the last 20 years, you know, like it's become so like, it's a 17/8 groove, and he's playing 11 over that with triplets in blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, okay, fantastic. Yeah. Like then you hear a Paul Motion melody, which is like 6 bars, and I'm like, man, or Bill Frisell plays a G chord, and I'm like,
yeah,
wow, okay, that's enough actually,
Yeah,
but
and I should say like some stuff I've heard where it's like 17 with someone putting over 11 over it, blah 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 blah, where I'm listening to it and cannot think analytically and just listen to it as music. There is some of that stuff that I've heard and been like, wow, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I ask the person about it, or I transcribe it, or I study it, be like, oh, that's what's happening. But it's first the musical impression that I have. There's something moving there, and then if I'm curious enough, I figure out, the machine behind it. And sometimes it is that kind of intricate stuff, and other times it's like, oh, I'm not really like, it's not resonating with me. Yeah, but it should, because they're playing 11 over 17. I don't care. I care about that secondarily too, if it's something that's inspiring to me,
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny, this stuff. I wanted to ask you.
But I actually had a student today.
Oh yeah. Oh no, sorry.
I thought about this, but I had a student today. Made me so happy. He just finished high school, and he's a great student. Just really open and works really hard. And I constantly give him listening recommendations, and he checks everything out, and he has questions. And one of the things was Cecil Taylor's unit structures.
Wow, yeah.
And so we were talking about it. He's like, yeah, I put it on, and I was like, what is going on? And he's like, okay, yeah, I'm not like, paying attention the way I should. He's like, so I just put the headphones on and turn the light off and just listen to the whole thing.
Oh wow.
And then everything really, and it was just like, I don't know why this conversation made me think of it, but it was just this idea of like listening. I think when he first put it on, he listened as a musician, as a drummer, as a student, in that kind of analytical way. And it's just like, well, okay, wait a minute. Andrew Cyril's symbol is not lining up with this thing, which I think is no. Then he just listens to it as a human being. And just absorbing the sounds, and then he's just like, oh wow. And then after he has the oh wow moment, then the musician, the student says, okay, so how did they come up with this music? How is Andrew Cyril thinking about this? What is Cecil Taylor do you know what I mean? So it's like, as opposed to just saying, well, I don't what meter is this thing? You know what, they're just messing around. I'm gonna move on.
Yeah,
it just made me so happy.
Yeah,
that he had that awareness to kind of take that approach. Anyway,
in the end, it's all about the music, like you said. That if it attracts you or not. I really love Ben Munder, and I listened so much to his music, obviously, and compositions, and I don't know, some tunes, he has like a finger pattern. I listened to it, and I didn't think about whether it's in 13 or whatever, and what's happening with the bass lines, and and it was so beautiful. And then I bought his book of compositions, man, and I was like,
yeah,
are you serious? It's like every bar is changing, the bass line is changing, the intricate lines he plays, the kind of arpeggiated, they are changing constantly. I'm like, okay, now that puts a totally different perspective on this tune now, And I always, when I hear this music, I'm like, fuck, this is so heavy, man. It's like, but when I first heard it, I was like, man, this is so beautiful. And now I'm like, shit, it's incredible. Anyway, I don't know why I went
that's
there.
A great example. That's a great example.
But
I love his music,
yeah.
and I listen to it, and I can't, I understand the guitar to a certain extent, but I don't know what's difficult or advanced, it's just, and especially the way he plays, it just, everything just sounds effortless, but it's a similar thing. And I looked at that book too, and it's just like, oh wow, that looks really hard. But when I listen to it, it's just like, wow, this is just beautiful, very evocative music, very intricate and attention to detail. But I'm not thinking about, wow, this is really hard. I'm thinking about how cool it is. And then, as we're all just, students, perpetual students, then you can go and investigate and look at like the craft that goes into it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm always really curious how drummers approach his music, because it's just like, 16 pages of constant changes. And it's just, then you listen what Ted Poor does, or Satoshi or whoever, and it's just like, man, or Tom Rainey or whoever, it's incredible how much music can be put into that. But I wanted to ask you, like, about your connection with Michael Formanek. I mentioned Tom Screw before, and he's like, you and Mary are, I think, 20, 30 years, probably 20 or 30, 20. Sorry, Mike, I'm making you older, but like, how did you hook up with Mike first? And,
Yeah. Well, I mean, we obviously both knew who he was and had heard his music, and he subbed in Taylor's sextet for a gig. And we just had a really instantaneous musical connection. And also, I remember, like, after the sound check, backstage, the conversation was really, really natural, and talking about music and talking about ourselves and making jokes, it just has that natural flow. And then playing also, there were some really cool moments within the music. And so, how it is afterwards, oh, that was great, we should play again. People say, not that they don't mean it, but it's said a lot.
No, sure.
It kind of disappears into the, into dust. But we all followed up. Hey, it was great to play. Hey, we should do it again. Let's do it again here. And so it just was really all three of us taking the initiative to follow up. We agreed early on to write music specifically for the three of us. We booked some gigs. We rehearsed. I mean, again, to the point of Mary's Amaryllis, the three of us, if you send us some music, like we don't come, it's not like perfect or whatever, but we really do our homework.
We'll check it out,
so we can show up and really start working on how we work together, as opposed to like, oh, I can't play that. Can we do these 8 bars again? Because I don't know what I'm doing, here. So we could really have these very focused rehearsals and get through a lot of material, and it just, we just all have really enjoyed it and really committed to it. And it's a real collective, so everyone has to be proactive and everyone has to take responsibility for something, and we've done that. There's not a thing where 1 or 2 people are doing all the work and then someone else is just kind of showing up. We really share the responsibilities. As playing music, the playing of the music is the fun part, but there's a lot of logistics and a lot of emails and plans and plane tickets and whatever, and so we divide up that work.
Oh, it's beautiful. Okay.
Well, and so this is our 2022 is our 10-year anniversary.
Wow. And so it's actually like a working band, like it's like a group. That's rare.
Yeah, I mean, we
nowadays.
have our 7th album is coming out in the fall. So we've done
Fantastic.
7 albums. We play really regularly in North America and Europe, and then also play together in other contexts.
Sure.
You know, it's the 3 of us on my last Hookup album, on Mary's Code Girl, Michael's Big Band. So there's just, at this point, there's this rapport. We just played on Thursday. I don't know what day it is.
Oh yeah,
anyway, we played
Vancouver,
last week
right?
at Vancouver Jazz.
Yeah, I saw that. How was that? Fun?
Yeah.
That's cool, huh?
And it was so great. It was so fun. And we were laughing because we're playing these tunes and like, I mean, I don't want to say like making mistakes, but things got loose in certain moments, or like, and it just didn't matter. Like we're so connected that we just follow the thing and make something, and like there wasn't even a moment. I didn't even like, if I screwed something up, I didn't even feel bad. I wasn't like, oh, I screwed that up. Let me try to. It's just like, oh, it just was an opportunity,
Yeah.
It's like there is some quote where it's just like, and I forget who it is. I know but it's something along the lines of like, a mistake isn't a mistake, it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're playing with musicians or certain music where a mistake is not the mistake is an opportunity to try to fix it quick because things are falling apart around you. These are really opportunities to like, okay, where can we go with this, and like, what can we do creatively? And it was one of those gigs, not because we made a mistake or something like that, but it was just one of those gigs where you just realize just how much trust and rapport and history we have together. So with Mike, that's been 10 years, and it's really great.
Yeah.
Obviously the bass and drum
drums, yeah,
is really important in all this music. And so again, it's one of those things where I feel like with a lot of those long time connections with Mary, with Taylor, it's that combination of being super familiar and super comfortable, but also constantly surprised and inspired.
Challenging each other, yeah. Are you guys coming to Europe soon with Tom's crew, or?
Yeah, we'll be there in October. We have a tour in October.
Oh man, I have to check you guys out. I hopefully can catch you if you're in Austria, maybe somewhere. Would love to see you live.
Yeah,
I'll check your guys' schedules, and
cool. Yeah,
it would be so cool to see you. Great,
yeah.
Superman. Toma, what about you as a leader? Like, you have this new album out. Like, are you writing some new stuff already, or thinking about something new?
Yeah, so this, Triple Double's second album, March, came out this past March. The vinyl is finally done, so that will be out this month. I have, I'll be announcing it soon, but I have some more material from that group, which I'll be putting out there soon.
Super.
I have a commission for a new ensemble I put together, which hasn't been announced yet, but I'm working on writing that music. And then I have a trio with Patricia Brennan and Tamika Reed called the Seven Poets Trio.
Oh,
we
wow.
did one album on Rogart, maybe in 2019.
I have to check it out. Okay, don't know this one.
Yeah, yeah, it's on Rogart. And so I've written some music and continue to write some music for that trio, which we'll record early next year.
Fantastic.
So I'm writing for that. And then actually just pre-pandemic and certainly over the pandemic, was working on solo music.
Wow, solo drums, or?
Yeah.
Oh wow, man. Okay.
So I did a few. I've done a few gigs. And yeah, so just working on those pieces.
Oh, okay.
And actually I didn't do any. That was more improvised. But I did this really cool compilation on the great drummer Brian Chase's label. And he's basically doing these tapes, asking for musicians that play the same instrument to submit 10 to 15 minutes of music. So the drum one was myself, Brian Chase, Chess Smith, and Susie Ibarra.
Oh wow!
So that was nice to record some of my solo stuff. But those were more improv based. For my solo project, I'm really thinking about compositions for the drum set.
Wow.
And,
okay, interesting.
And really trying to limit myself to like the acoustic kind of 4-piece kit.
Okay, really curious about this. Okay, looking forward to hear that.
So I've been working on that. So yeah,
fantastic.
always stuff to work on. And actually, Illegal Crowns, which is me and Mary and Taylor and Benoit Delbecq.
I love that band. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we just finally were able to do our first US tour. This was the 4th reschedule between COVID and visa stuff for Benoit. You know, we were finally able to do it over 2 years after the fact. After the initial tour was supposed to happen, we had a great tour. We recorded. So I wrote some music for that, and we're really happy with it. I mean, it was just so thankful that it was finally able to happen, and that he was able to come here. And so we recorded that. So that'll be out early next year.
Oh, fantastic! I love Benoit. I mean, especially with you guys when you hooked up together. I was like, man.
Oh, he's incredible.
You know, he's a monster player. Anything he does, one of my favorite composers. Really. Also, his own stuff, man. It's like, woo, so beautiful.
It's amazing, and he's a great. It's cool in that band because with no bass, you know, we're kind of functioning and interesting. Obviously, with Mary, it's almost like a 3-person rhythm section.
Yeah.
but there's certain compositions, especially some of his, where he and I are kind of operating in more of like a rhythm section role, while Mary and Taylor are more frontline role. I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but the reason I bring that up is kind of connecting with him in that kind of like rhythmic foundational way, especially with his prepared stuff.
Yeah.
And just incredible sound and texture, and also like really great time and feel. I mean, there's certain moments and pieces with this new book where it's basically all on him to just keep this groove going while all this other stuff is happening. And it's just like he's so solid in the pocket, like, and doing all this other stuff on top of it. It was really inspiring to play with him again. It had been way too long.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love his solo piano stuff. You know, have you checked that out?
Yeah, it's like, actually, I checked it out. I had a digital version of it, which I checked out a lot, and then I got a physical CD from him on this last tour, and I've already listened to it like 3 times just at home, just kind of missing him. And then
it's incredible. It's like some of the best solo piano I've heard. Like, you know, it's so much happening there. Rhythmically especially. It's just like, man, you know, how do you do that? Anyway, yeah.
And he's one of those musicians who plays 2 notes and you're like, oh, that's Benoit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. Cool. Great, man. Thanks so much for, I won't, you know, I'll give you a nice remainder of the hot Sundays. But thanks for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad this worked out.
It was so much fun. So, and I hope to catch you in Europe one day soon. I mean, if